For the second time in a week, you had ICE agents shooting and killing a motorist right in the middle of a public street for everyone to see. And both times, the people killed were allegedly not their intended targets. Right now, you've got ICE insiders reportedly blaming a directive from Trump himself as the reason behind these killings. Right? And because there are a ton of moving parts here, let's break down what we know so far, starting with this latest shooting yesterday in Biddeford, Maine. Because you have a ton of conflicting versions of events, including from the Trump administration itself. A situation you've also seen not helped by the fact that the Department of Homeland Security took around 12 hours to release an official statement, and they provided very little information in the days since the shooting. Right, not long after the shooting, you had Senator Angus King of Maine saying in a press conference that he had spoken directly to DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin, and that Mullin had initially told him that the man who was killed had a deportation order against him. So you had King telling reporters he was in a vehicle, pulled out in the vehicle, and the term the secretary used was weaponized the vehicle and was shot by an ICE agent. And the use of the term weaponized is very notable here because it is one that federal officials have repeatedly used to justify fatal shootings of motorists. That includes people like Renee Good, with the officers claiming that their lives they were in danger. And actually, in a DHS communication sent to members of Congress, the department reportedly used that same language, saying that the driver had weaponized his vehicle toward law enforcement. But then you saw the story start to change. 3 hours after his initial conversation with Mullin, you had King saying that the secretary had called him back to tell him that the man who was killed actually hadn't been the target that they were seeking. But then, when the DHS finally released his statement, you saw that they made no mention of that fact, and they also did not explicitly say that the man had tried to use his vehicle as a weapon against ICE agents. Instead, you had the agency just stating that ICE had been conducting targeted surveillance on the last known address of an illegal alien with a final order of removal, claiming that the person in question departed the residence in a vehicle and ICE attempted to conduct a vehicle stop, but then added the vehicle attempted to flee the scene and, fearing for public safety, an officer discharged his weapon. The DHS going on to say that the driver of the vehicle was struck and passed away from his injuries. And when asked by CNN about the contrasting statements, you had King noting that the official public statement does not explicitly allege that the officer who fired his weapon felt like he was in danger, right? Arguing that these discrepancies just emphasize the need for a clear, transparent investigation, saying, did this young man actually try to run over an ICE agent, or was he in danger of running over other people in the street? Was there a reasonable expectation of bodily harm or deadly force to justify this shooting? But really, as of recording this video, we do not have all that much more information about what went down. You did have a spokesperson for King's office telling reporters that the man was identified as John Sebastian Guerrero. And according to immigrants' rights groups, he was a 26-year-old from Colombia who was authorized to work in the United States and had a social security number. You also had neighbors saying that he had a partner and a young child, and some witnesses reported that his partner and child were actually both in the car with him when he was shot and killed. All while, as far as the shooting itself, as of recording, the Trump administration hasn't produced any video evidence that backs up its version of events. So bystander video from the scene appears to show a white car approaching an intersection at a slow speed and making several circles as agents on foot try to stop it. There's also security camera footage from a little later, seconds, maybe minutes, we really don't know yet. There, we see an SUV blocking the car and agents pulling what appears to be a limp body out of the driver's seat, which of course we can't show here. Well, very notably here, we do not know exactly at what point this shooting took place. You did have one witness saying that he looked out his window after hearing gunshots and saw the driver was wounded and the car moving down the street until the SUV hit it, and added, his face was bloody, his head was bloody. I clearly heard the victim say, I tried to stop. At least as of right now, that's basically all we know, and it's unclear how much more evidence we're actually going to get because, according to King, none of the ICE officers were wearing body cameras. This, for some reason, despite the fact that both Congress and the Trump administration have said that they would equip agents with those devices. And actually, when asked about the lack of accountability this morning, you had House Speaker Mike Johnson just deflecting, basically saying that he was too busy to even think about it.
The ICE agents who killed the person in Maine yesterday were reportedly not using body-worn cameras, and that's despite DHS officials coming to Congress and repeatedly saying over the last few months that they want to expand body camera usage. Does there need to be accountability on DHS from Congress here?
I don't know anything about this event. Okay, I was a little busy yesterday, so I'm going to reserve judgment. I know that there was a tragic shooting, and I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know. And you guys can mock me for not knowing that. I worked about 22 hours in the last few days, and I did not get the briefing on that yet. I will this morning.
So unsurprisingly, Guerrero's death, it sparked massive outrage with protesters taking to the streets in Maine. And you have many arguing this is yet another example of indiscriminate killing by trigger-happy ICE agents without any evidence, at least yet, that the officers actually needed to use lethal force. And again, those feelings, this opinion, it's been supercharged by the fact that it hasn't even been a week since ICE fatally shot a motorist at a traffic stop in Houston, Texas, or with what many have described as a very eerily similar incident. But according to reports, the man they killed last Tuesday was Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. He was a Mexican construction worker, a father of 3 who had lived in the United States for more than 30 years without legal status. And like Guerrero, he actually wasn't the initial target of the officers who pursued the van of construction workers that he was driving. Right, according to DHS, ICE agents were close to the address of their actual target when they observed a white van with an individual who resembled the target and initiated a traffic stop. And also, like in the other shooting, DHS claims that the van was weaponized in an attempt to run over an officer who then fired his gun in self-defense. But that's as you had the other passengers in the vehicle disputing that account, right, with one saying that the ICE agents who did not identify themselves actually pulled their vehicles up on both sides of the van and not the front or the back, so it would be impossible for ICE to believe that the car was trying to run them over. You also had other witnesses saying that this man was shot only after he had stopped the car, right, alleging that the officers had fired into a side window almost immediately after exiting his vehicle and that the driver had never even veered in the officer's direction. And again, also like yesterday's shooting, the ICE agents in Texas were not wearing body cameras. And so as a result, you've had ICE thrust right back into the spotlight, right, with this seeming to rekindle the outrage that we saw after the back-to-back killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy back in January. And what you're seeing with a lot of people is that they're directly blaming Trump, right? Because according to places like the Daily Beast, these killings, they came just days after Trump issued a covert order for an arrest surge that swept up more than 10,000 people in 5 days. You even reportedly had one senior official telling reporters that the quotas are the reason for the bloodshed, saying that agents are getting stretched thin and being put in bad positions, and adding, no matter how well they're trained, they are being pushed to the breaking point. With the official then also going on to say that traffic stops have become a flashpoint because they're the only way to meet the quotas, arguing that these stops, they should be halted altogether until ICE can get a handle on shit. And actually, it seems like that wish might be coming true because just today, you had reports that ICE is suspending traffic stops in the wake of yesterday's shooting. But for now, we'll have to keep a close eye on this situation and see what happens next, especially because they probably want this to kind of be swept under the rug. And so, hey, in the meantime, 1, I'd really love to know your thoughts in those comments down below. 2, if you liked adding this extra bit of bonus news today that didn't fit into the show, definitely hit us with a like, get us back into your algorithm. And 3, if you haven't already, definitely check out today's full show. You have the moist critical Technoblade LARPing scandal, the fallout in Israel over clavicular and Netanyahu, which is just a weird sentence to say, as well as updates around the Daniel Irving drowning and calls for murder charges, and the new crazy updates and strikes with Iran and Trump.